Reformed Church.
1 Timothy chapter 6, just verse number 11, I guess. And, prior to, the first several verses above verse number 11, in verse number 10, for instance, he talks about the love of money. And a lot of this, what he's talking about in this specific chapter, he's talking about where Timothy's seeking should be. And in verse number 11, he says, but you, O man of God, he says, flee these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, gentleness. And this is the New King James that I'm reading from. In verse number 12, he says, fight the good fight of faith, lay hold on eternal life to which you were also called, and have confessed the good confession in the presence of many witnesses. And let me see if I bring you just to a slightly different translation. If we can go to the Young's Little translation, kind of pretty cool translation there. Obviously, we just read it says, fight the good fight of faith, right? In the Young's Little translation, it says, be striving the good strife of the faith. Be laying hold on the life age during to which also you were called, and did confess the right profession before many witnesses. So it's interesting because normally when we hear the word strife, like strife to us is, like contention, right? Problems between people, right? But actually there is another definition for the word strife, which is what he's talking about, like be striving, like when you strive or when you endeavor, right? That word strife there is actually referring to that, not the strife of faith, meaning like the contention or the problem of faith that it causes, right? But what it's saying is be striving the good strife of faith, which is the same thing as a good fight, okay? You can kind of say that, but what I had been thinking about just in reference to that verse, that's kind of where I was just really thinking about just the church in general and the striving of the church and the, how the church, how the people of God, like how we strive in so many different directions, right? And the Lord saying, when you, actually in Isaiah, I believe it's Isaiah 30. We won't necessarily go there, at least not right now. But in Isaiah 30, he says, that kind of just paraphrasing, like how the blessings of God will continue in your life. He says, whenever you turn, he says, to the right or to the left, he says, you'll hear a word saying to you, this is the way, walk in it, right? And the part that, I talked about a little bit, but I think it bears mentioning again, is just the encouragement for us as the church to not turn to the right or to the left, right? But that our sight can be set singularly on Jesus Christ and Him crucified. There was a little post that I put on Facebook that got a little bit of traction. But when you think about, I think what I basically wrote there, just in a paraphrase, I just wrote there that the things, the way that we were saved was not through. That the way that we were saved was not through our own work. So it's not what we did that saved us, but it is what Christ did that saved us, right? So that we came into salvation because of what Jesus did and not what we did. And then what I wrote after that was, in the same way, we are blessed not because of what we do, but because of what Christ has done, right? But what happens is, and like I said, it got a little traction. I think probably 100% of the people were like, oh, well, like we love that, we like that, right? Like that sounds good to most people. But the thing is, at the same time, talking about the church in general, not just the few that reacted to that, but the church in general would agree with that, right? That it's not what I do, it's what Jesus has done. Like basically almost no one would disagree with that. But the problem is, though, that in the same breath, if you were to say, that, but, it's not what we do, but you know what, God does want us to be good stewards of what we have. And you know what happens, you know, when you're a good steward in your finances, or you're a good steward of this, or you're, you know, God will, you know, he'll put more on you. You know, he'll give you more responsibility if you show yourself faithful. And just all of this stuff that puts, now, you know, you agreed with a statement before that said that you're blessed in your life, not because of anything that you do, but because of everything that God has done through Jesus, right? And then all of a sudden now we put all of these conditions. So even though in the church would agree to certain things, because no one in the church wants to put anything in front of Jesus in a knowing way, right? Nobody wants to say, yeah, what you did, Jesus, is not enough. People in the church are not going to say that out loud, right? They're not going to say, what you did, Jesus, is not enough. But the thing is, if we would see, if we would understand that there are lots and lots and lots of conditions that the church puts in front of things that have been freely given to us, right? Salvation first and foremost, right? In other words, you're receiving the Spirit of God was free to you. It was all that you did was, right, the hearing of faith. The apostle says, how did you receive the Lord? How did you receive the Spirit of God that is in you now? Did you receive him by the works of the law or by the hearing of faith? And obviously the answer to that the church, you know, around the globe, right, the Church of Jesus Christ believes is that, yeah, it was by the hearing of faith. Everybody would agree with that. But then why is it that we so quickly embrace things that put conditions in front of our receiving the same gift, from the same gift that was given to us and put on the inside of us, the same inheritance that we have received that has been given to us? Why is it that we put conditions? And you know, one of the things, just thinking out loud here, people would never believe that the Lord just like wants to condone sin, condone actions that are wrong, right? But it's not about, you know, when we say that it's not about your actions, when we talk about the fact that it's not about what you do, but it's what he did, it's not that the Lord says, okay, so because of that, that means that God condones sin, that God is fine with us just doing things that are wrong. That's not the point. What God has said is wrong will always be wrong, right? It's not the point of whether God considers it right or wrong, right? Sin is sin regardless, right? Regardless of whether we are saved or not saved, sin is sin. The thing is, if you sin in your life, which means if you do something wrong, right? Sinning is doing something incorrect, something wrong. If you do something wrong, does that change your righteousness? Does that change what you have received from Jesus? Does that change the way that we receive from Jesus, right? Because what happens is we get into a very narrow place, which we should be in, that before you is just the glory of the Lord in the face of Jesus Christ. Before is just you beholding Christ and him crucified and everything that he's done for you. And it's kind of, you know, it's always struck me, you know, like when I read about Balaam and the very narrow place that the donkey brought him into, where it says that he could not turn to the right or to the left. So I kind of picture him like here he is riding on this donkey, right? And he comes in and I don't remember right now in these 5 minutes if he was on his way to curse the people of God. I believe that's what it was. But the donkeys, he's coming into such a narrow place, and the angel of the Lord is like right in front of him, right? And the donkey sees the angel, but Balaam doesn't see him. So the donkey sees the angel. And he's pressing Balaam's leg between the donkey's body is Balaam's leg and the wall, right, of this narrow place that he's coming into as he's trying to go through this passage or whatever it was. And then Balaam starts beating the donkey because he's hurting him, right? But you know, the thing that strikes me about that, and I was thinking about it again just yesterday, is he could not turn to the right or to the left. And you know, what an awesome thing it is for the church to be able to come, not this church, the church, right? To be able to come to a place where you just, in your mind, you have become stiff-necked, right? Where you just cannot look to the right or to the left. And the Lord spoke in a negative sense to the people of Israel, that they had become stiff-necked in their way and would refuse to turn to him, right? But there is a good way to be stiff-necked, right? I remember when I joined the Navy years ago, the first day that you're there at boot camp, right away you start hearing these words, right? And this thing that you start learning real quick, what it means is rubbernecking, right? They tell you to stop rubbernecking. And what it is you don't know what's going on. You don't know where you are. You don't know what's coming next. They just put you in a line and you're standing like heel to toe with this guy right in front of you, and his head, the back of his head is right in front of you. So you're kind of looking around, right? You look to the right or to the left, and they get right in your face, and they want you to look forward, and they want you to stop rubbernecking, right? They want you to be stiff-necked. They want you to just look forward and don't worry about nothing else. Just look forward. Look at the head of the guy in front of you, and that's it. Just don't rubberneck. Just be stiff-necked, right? And that is the desire of God for his church. In other words, that is what will cause the church to be able to become active participants and partakers of everything that Jesus has already done, that you become so stiff-necked, right? That, in other words, and that comes naturally, right? Becoming stiff-necked comes very naturally by the renewing of your mind, because the thing is, the more that you learn about Christ, the more you see that there is nothing that Christ did that I could have done for myself. There is nothing that Christ did for me already that I could ever get through a different source, right? There is nothing in the totality of this universe that could ever afford me the things that I got from Jesus. Nothing, not a single solitary thing that I get from Jesus, have gotten from him today, right, that I have received from God today, that I could get from any other source. That's why it becomes so easy. As your mind is renewed, it becomes so simple for you to understand that if I'm doing something today that I'm doing without the Lord, right, then I'm living in a way that I ought not to live, right? In other words, if I put stock, if I find it advantageous, the talents that I have of myself, in other words, natural talents that I have of my own, and I find them advantageous to my prosperity in this world. Now, I'll bring that down a little bit more, right? If I think that because I'm good at something, that's the reason why I can get money in this world and be able to prosper and feed my family, right? If I think that my way to wealth, right, is my own ability, obviously anybody can do that. I don't need Jesus for talents, right? I don't need him for that. And that thought right there, I don't need Jesus for this. I don't need Jesus for this. That in and of itself right there becomes a real prominent way of your thought process, because you realize this is just natural thinking. These are just things that I thought, or anyone would think for that matter, are advantageous to them, but today I count them as a disadvantage. Paul said those things that I once thought advantageous, I count them as loss today. In other words, he's saying I count them a disadvantage. But how could that be, right? If you're really good at something, and that being real good at that thing is actually causing you to be good at your job, which is causing you to make more money and to be promoted, right? How could it possibly be that could be a disadvantage to me? How could it ever be a disadvantage for me to utilize what people say, the talent that God has given me? But the thing is, the talent is not what God has given you, right? Because if you never knew Jesus, right, you could still be talented at something, right? So did that come from God? No, right? That's just leftover stuff from human ability, right? Monkeys have talents, right? Monkeys have talents, sharks have talents, right? Sea animals, whatever. I mean, everything that is created has a talent. In other words, it has something that it can do. But the thing is, but when it comes to advantage and disadvantage, how can it possibly be that something that I am good at could ever be a disadvantage to me? Because anything that you do, that you lean on, right? Like you lean on this thing as a support for my life, right? Like I'm leaning on this thing, like this is me. I have to lean on this thing in order to be able to continue, right? Every time you do that, you are not leaning on what he did. Anytime that you lean on something that you do without him, you are in other words, you are expecting fruitfulness in your life from something that you do, not from the Spirit of God in you. So when I learn and I get to a point, right, where my mind is continually being renewed, and I see, Lord, your power in me actually empowers me towards all things. So it's not a matter of like, because this is funny, right? How people look at it. I have a talent in here, right? So what it is the Lord will let me use my talent to its limit, and then the Lord will make up the difference and keep it going. No. He wants for you to completely let go of all of it, and he will supply the full power, the full measure towards anything. The Lord never, ever, there is not a single scripture, it's just a humanistic idea that people have that the Lord kind of supplements your ability, right? That you do what you can do, and then the Lord will do what you can't do. But the thing is, you have to come to a place where you realize, I can do nothing without him, right? As long as you think you can do something, you will continue to do something and then ask God to do then what you can't. But that's not poverty, right? Poverty is nothing, right? Coming to a place, in other words, Jesus Christ came to preach to the poor, not to those that think they can do something by themselves, but he came to preach to the poor, those that are completely destitute without him. That's how you came to Jesus, right? You came to the Lord because you said, I can't, you did. You saw to an extent, Lord, this is what you have done, and you saw yourself poor. But unfortunately, the church does not see its inability in the flesh to do things, right? It thinks somehow that Christ has come to live in you to just exactly that. If I had a different way of saying it, I would say it differently. But the church believes that the function of the Spirit of God is to supplement you. But no, he came to replace you, right? He came to replace your power. He came to replace your ability. He came to replace your thinking. He came to completely and utterly replace you. It is no longer I that live, replaced, but Christ that lives in me, replaced. He came to replace us, right? To replace us so that the way that we think is God's thoughts. The way that we act are God's actions. The power with which we work is the power of God. See, the Lord doesn't want us to work in a power that is sufficient to an extent. The Lord wants you to work with a power that is now yours, that it has no limit and no end. Right? In other words, people are afraid sometimes. The church is scared to let go of its ability, because if it lets go of its ability, it thinks it's at a deficit, right? But think of this clearly, right? Just allow the Spirit of God to show you. If the Lord says, I am the one that has given you the power to get wealth, right? That is unlimited wealth. That is wealth without any conditions. That is wealth that is separate and apart from what you do. That is wealth that is separate and apart from whether you've been a good boy or a bad boy, whether you have done right or done wrong, right? God, see, it's interesting, right? We think in terms of like worldly fairness. We think in line of worldly limits. We think, in other words, those are human thoughts, right? Human thoughts that always obviously have limits, right? You can only prosper to this much. You can only have so much money, right? But the point is, though, that God is the one that empowers us, right? Empowers us towards all things. So if we really knew of the power of God that we had, if we really knew of what Jesus had done and who he's made us and what we have, right? We would understand, my God, you have made me a son. You have made me an heir and a joint heir with Christ. Jesus, what limits do you have? What limits do you have to prosper, right? Does Jesus today is there anything limiting him in what he possesses? Is there anything limiting him in what he can have? Is there anything limiting him in his years? Is there anything limiting Jesus today? Nothing limits him, right? So the church can more easily see that there are no limits on Jesus, but doesn't see itself that way. There is and again, I honestly, I believe this wholeheartedly, that there is no one in the church that I believe that thinks like, yeah, Lord, like I want to limit you in my life. Like we don't think in terms of that. We don't say, oh, I don't want to count on everything, Jesus, that you did on the cross. I just want to kind of rely a little bit on what you've done. But the thing is, what I want to bring to the forefront of your mind that you would see is that when you're striving is anywhere right or left. And we have to see this. the narrow place that the Lord brings you to is where before Him and in your thinking, the only thing that you behold and what He's teaching you or testifying of to you, what He's speaking to you of, the things that He's teaching you is Jesus Christ and Him crucified and the glory that is yours that He shared with you because of that very purpose, Jesus Christ and Him crucified. But that would be it. And that any time that you rubberneck, any time that you look to the right or to the left, any time that you would see anything, any time that you would see being a good steward, that's right or left, right? Being your church attendance, that's right or left, right? Being a good mom, a good dad, a good husband, a good wife, right or left. Being sin-free for 3 months, right or left, right? Anything, any striving that is apart from you beholding Him is right or left. And you will, if we listen to the Lord, you will hear the Lord saying, remember, this is the way, walk here. He is the way. He is the only way, He is the only truth, He is the only life. He left us with no other recourse, no other way to the blessing of God. There is no way for a Christian to be blessed other than the blessedness that we already possess through what Jesus has already done. We are already blessed. We're not going to be blessed, we are already blessed. The church says it all over the place. How you doing? I'm blessed. But we don't understand what we're saying. We don't understand. We agree with it. We have made mental assent to the fact that we're blessed, but we don't understand what we're saying. When you say you're blessed, you're saying, you know what? It don't matter what's going on out here. It don't matter what I may be feeling. I am blessed. In other words, the blessing of God is fully on the inside of me. And I can be clothed with that same blessing. I can be clothed upon this mortal body. I can have things added to me, right, without limit. I am a blessed individual, and God will make a distinction between His children and those that aren't, and there is nothing that qualifies me apart from Jesus Christ and Him crucified. I have received the salvation that is mine through Jesus, and I need no other qualification. Listen, do you deserve to be promoted if you don't do the best job? It's not about, listen, I get it. We think that promotion has to do with your performance, right? But the Lord can prosper you financially even when someone else doesn't promote you, even when someone else doesn't give to you. The Lord, right, will prosper you. The Lord will add to you. And it has nothing to do with your performance, right? It didn't matter. Listen, you see Abraham in his life. It doesn't matter what that man did, right? The example that we always use, I just think is a good example, right? He, in all fairness, between him and the king, which I don't remember the king's name right now. It's an Egyptian king, I believe. That's not the point. I think it was a pharaoh. But he comes into this town, and his wife is with him, right? His wife is with him. And he allows a heathen king to take the woman that he married because he was afraid, right, for his life. So he allows a man to take his wife to be one of the king's concubine. So he's going to allow a man to take his wife and be intimate with the woman that he married, right? Just because he was afraid for himself, right? And the king receives a message from God, and the Lord tells him, right? Give that man back his wife, or you're a dead man, right? But the truth is, it was within the king's right as king to take whatever woman he wanted. And he says to the Lord, he said, I did not know that this woman was his wife. He didn't tell me that. I didn't know that. He says, I'm completely I am the one that has been wronged. I'm the victim. Abraham is the one that did wrong. And the Lord, he says, I get it. The Lord basically, I'm paraphrasing him, but the Lord says, I get it. This is not your fault, right? But nonetheless, he is righteous, right? He has put his faith in my son. Therefore, if you don't give him back his wife, you're a dead man, right? It's not about human fairness, right? It's about God knows those that are his. It has nothing to do with what you do. It has everything to do with what he's done. And if the next thought that you have in your mind is, well, then does that mean that I can just do whatever I want? You're the one that right now is thinking wrong. You are the one that are immature of your way of thinking, that you think that now that gives me a license to do whatever I want, like God is the one that is going to condone sin. We have to mature in our understanding to know what it means to depend on what Jesus Christ has done and only what he's done. And that means that it has to, if God is going to be just, he has to exclude what you have done. Why? Because what you have done has already been paid for. God is not letting you get away with whatever you want to do. It's just that whatever you do has already been paid for, therefore you're righteous. Everything that Abraham did wrong, right, was what Christ was going to pay for ahead of him. Therefore, because of his faith in a Savior that would come and would die on a cross for his sins, right? Just the same way we put faith in Jesus that it is behind us, right? In a cross that is 2,000 years ago, if Abraham was putting his faith, I don't know how long before, but if he was putting his faith in Jesus that was 2,000 years in front of him, it really doesn't matter. You can put faith in Jesus in front of you or behind you, and the righteousness that you get is the same thing. Because it's not about what Abraham did, right? It's what Christ was gonna do. It's not about what you do, it's about what Jesus Christ already did, right? It's not about what Abraham did, it's what Jesus was gonna do, right? And it's the same way with us, right? The righteousness that we have is a just righteousness. So God, for us to say stuff like that, for us to say, so does that mean that I can just do whatever I want? What you're saying is God a God that condones sin and is not just, right? That's what you're kind of saying. So we have to know that sometimes we ask questions in our own minds, right? We're not looking at it according to Christ. We are thinking in a humanistic, non-God, non-Jesus. In other words, our thoughts are not according to Christ. So therefore, it's kind of like you think, like, well, if I'm guilty, if I break the law, right, and I go to jail, and then they just say, you know what, we changed our mind, forget it. We're going to just let you loose. Then the natural thing that's going to happen is that person, you know what, if they think they can get away with murder, then they'll get away with murder, right? But that's not the way that God works, and it's not the way that he's renewing your mind, right? It's actually the righteousness that we get now is not of the law. So it's not about me breaking a law and being punished for breaking a law. That is living under the law of Moses, right? 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments, you break them, you die, right? You break them, you're guilty. You break them, you're condemned. That's living under the law, right? We are not under the law. What does that mean? Not living under the law doesn't mean God changed his mind about the law. He actually doesn't think those things are bad anymore. That's not living under the law. What God said is wrong is still wrong today. What he's saying is what you have received, right, is the punishment that I put upon my own son for those wrongs that you did and will do, right? He's saying, I have punished your sin. So the reason why you're blameless in my sight is not because I'm in a good mood. The reason why you're blameless in my sight is because I have punished your sin in the body of my son. Therefore, your way into righteousness is no longer doing the right thing. Your way into righteousness is faith in Jesus Christ, faith in my son, faith on what he has done, right? So if we entered into the kingdom and were saved, not because we were good people, because no Christian, no person that is a Christian now got their act all together and then were saved, because obviously that would be self-righteousness. You didn't come into the kingdom, which means that you became a son, which means that you became a joint heir with Christ, which means that you received the Spirit of God. All of that you possess today did not come to you because of your performance, right? It came to you because of one thing, your faith in Jesus. And that's it. Nothing else. So if we were to allow God to continually renew our mind to just listen, that simple thought, which seems so simple, Jesus Christ and him crucified. And see, you can clearly see then where it was that Paul's mind was coming to. The same place where our minds have been coming to. The same place where the apostle said, forgetting all things except Jesus Christ and him crucified. In other words, that is that narrow place where less and less you don't see a right and you don't see a left. Like you don't see any other way because you see everything that you've been given. We have been given every single advantage. All power, like there is no power that you would ever need to exert on your own that God hasn't already given you, right? But I get it. There are things that we still do because we don't walk perfectly in the power of God. So do you use talents today to do a job well? Yeah. You use a lot of your own ability still to work and to do things and to parent and to do all these things. But is that what God has given you? No, you come to a place where you realize, I know what I'm doing, but I know that that's not what God gave me. But how much of the church do you think today is always thanking God for their talents? And they actually think that the parable of the talents is actually the English word talent, right? It's just ignorance of what it is that God gives, right? We have been given every spiritual blessing in heavenly places, right? And there was a day when I thought, well, yeah, spiritual blessing, but almost like spiritual blessing, well, what the heck good are spiritual blessings to me in a carnal earth, right? Like what good could that be? Okay, you give me every spiritual blessing, so to me that was just stuff in heaven that I'll get when I get to heaven, right? But it's not that at all, right? Is that the power that is exerted through a Christian's life comes from God in you, right? So in other words, we have received everything that Christ has. And every spiritual blessing that you have on the inside of you is what manifests. In other words, when the church popularly talks about the manifestation of the Spirit, all that they're talking about, that which is spiritual being manifest or seen carnally, outwardly, right? But then that has to do with everything. That has to do with health and where it comes from spiritual blessings, right? Wealth comes from what? Spiritual blessing. In other words, all of the things that we make the church put its eyes on to seek after. In other words, when you tell someone, be a good steward and God will bless you financially, you just made them look to the right and to the left. You just did that. If you ever teach anyone, any pastor of any church, doesn't matter how good that pastor is, it doesn't matter how much of the gospel he preaches, if you tell a congregation of people that you are blessed because if you're a good steward of your finances, you just made them look away from Jesus and think that the source of their blessing is anything other. In other words, you made them look at a thief or a robber. You made them look at a doctrine that is other than Jesus Christ and Him crucified. So these are the same people. The same people that would question what I just said right there are the same people that say, if you were to ask them straight out, and you say, hey, listen, I noticed that you had a look on your face like you disagreed a bit with what I was just saying. But let me, do you think that you can be blessed in any way other than through Jesus Christ and what He's done? Do you think what Jesus did is sufficient for you? Oh, yes. You see what it is? We don't know what the heck we're saying. We think we know what we're saying, but we don't know what we're saying. The same person that said, how you doing? I'm blessed of the Lord. You don't know what you're saying. You're saying it, but you don't know what you're saying, right? Because if you really knew the source of your blessing, you would understand that there is only one striving that is needful, and that is to continue to hear. What do you do when you sin and do something wrong? Continue to hear. What do you do when you look to the right or to the left, right? Continue to hear. Let's see if there's a pattern here, right? What do I do if I do something wrong? You continue to hear. What do I do when I don't know what to do? You continue to hear. What do I do when I feel guilty? You continue to hear. What do I do when I feel condemned? You continue to hear. What do I do ever in my life, every single day of my life? You continue to hear. What is the pattern that we should follow? The same way that we were saved. How did you get saved? You continued to hear, right? There is nothing else to do. Come to a place in your life where you don't see nothing else. You can't see it. You can't make yourself go into that place. But when you come to that narrow place where you feel your legs being pressed up against the wall and there is nowhere else to go, that's exactly where God wants you, where you can't see nothing but Him. Your eyes can't focus on anything else other than Him. That's where you're actually growing to when you continue in one thing, Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Let me show you something. That I think will help you. If we can go to 1 Corinthians chapter 9, 1 Corinthians 9:24. It says, do you not know that those who run in a race all run? Now, this is important, right? He's saying those who are running in a race, that means everybody's running. Everybody's running, right? But one receives the prize. Now, this is interesting because it's normally not preached what I think is the most correct, and I don't know everything that this means in its totality, but I know this, right? Everyone who runs, everyone who's running a race, that means everybody's running, right? But the interesting part is, but there is only one that receives the prize, right? But has it ever bothered you when you've ever read that? Like, what are you telling me, Lord, that all of us can run and believe in Jesus, but only one of us will receive the prize? No, that's not at all what he's saying, right? He's saying that in a race, he said, don't you know that those who run in a race all run? So he's not trying to be like condescending is what he's saying, like duh. He said, no, everybody is running, but only one person is running right. Right? Only one person is running in a winning way, and that is that important, right? Only one of them is running in a winning way. Everybody's running, but only one person is running in a winning way. Therefore, only people that run in a winning way win. Right? And this is not about a marathon, right? This is not about you trying to equate this to a marathon or to a 5K race, right? This is for the Lord to show you something, a spiritual truth. Everyone who runs in a winning way wins if they continue. Everybody. There is no exclusion, right? Everyone who runs in the winning way wins. But if you run and it's not in the winning way, you are guaranteed that you will not win, you will lose, right? Being a good steward, you're running, but you're running in the wrong way, right? So you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose. That means in that area of your life, if you're a Christian and you think that your prosperity has to do with your good stewardship, you will lose. You are gonna lose in reference to your finances, right? You will get to a place where you will trust in yourself more fully than you have ever trusted in Christ. In other areas, you may love the Lord, you may be growing in knowledge, but when it comes to your finances, because you're gonna be a good financial manager, and you may very well see prosperity, right? But the problem is not whether you're gonna get money or not. The problem is not whether you're prospering financially or not. That's not the point. Because there are people without Jesus that are good stewards of their finances, and they are very wealthy people. The winning is not getting money, right? That's not the point. The point is that in your life, you're losing in that area of your life because you don't depend on what Christ has given you. You're depending on yourself. And it is always a losing proposition. Always be a disadvantage to you when you rely on what you can do instead of what he did. There is only one winning way. There is only one winning way, and that is the narrow place that you come to as you continue to grow in Jesus. There is one winning way, and that way is Jesus Christ and him crucified. So everyone in the race that he's talking about here, everybody's running, but not all run in a winning way. So he says, do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize, right? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. Run in such a way. There is one way. You know, like the church has to see this. I just implore, my God, the church of Jesus Christ, right, that we would see there is one way. One way. You hear anything else? That's another way. No, there is one way. What is a way to, people read a verse, give and it'll be given unto you. Okay, so now they think, okay, as long as I give, if I give to the poor, I will receive. No, now you got another way. Now you got another way. So you're wrong again. There is one way. One way. The way to prosper is not to give. The way to prosper is not to be a good steward. There is one way to prosperity, and God says, I am the one that gives you the power to get wealth. And there is no power in your life that comes to you or has come to you apart from the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. There is only one way. There is no power, zero power that comes into the life of a Christian apart from what Jesus provided through the cross. There is no other power, no other way to you, no other way that you got it, and no other way that it manifests itself other than through the knowledge of him. Grace and peace be multiplied unto you. In other words, everything that you have freely received from God is multiplied unto you through the knowledge of him. There is no other way. If you think stewardship and giving to the poor is a way, you're doing it a different way. You're rubbernecking. You're rubbernecking. You're looking to the right or to the left. And you should hear if you listen to the Lord close enough, because sometimes we can't hear because we are so wrapped up in our thoughts in what we're doing, right? And to the incorrect doctrine that other people are teaching you. He said, turn away from fables, turn away from incorrect doctrine, turn away from thieves and robbers. And I'm not saying that the preacher that is preaching it is the thief, right? Because there are preachers that are good that are still preaching dumb stuff like that, right? But the point is, what you're saying there is robbing the people that you love. What you are saying right there is robbing the people that you love. You are not intentionally saying it to rob them. You are just looking at a verse, and because you're not listening to what that verse is testifying of or to whom that verse is testifying of, what's happening is instead of seeing the whom it's testifying about, instead of seeing that scripture testifies about Jesus, you're seeing that verse as something that is something for you to do. And that leads what? To incorrect doctrine, incorrect teaching, right? He says, let me read it to you again, verse 24. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. And everyone who competes, right, for the prize is tempered in all things. Now they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. Therefore I run thus, not with uncertainty. He says, listen to what he says. He says, I do not run with uncertainty. In other words, he says, I run knowing what I'm doing. I run in such a way that I know that I'll win. You see what he's saying? And that may seem very bold, right? But that's actually the way that you enter into the things of God, is with that boldness, right? When you know that the one that you're beholding is Jesus Christ and him crucified, you're certain. In other words, he is your surety, right? He is your certainty, right? In other words, I know that if I continue to believe in Jesus Christ and him crucified, I am going to prosper financially. I am blessed. I know all of the things that will be added unto me. I don't have to live like a Gentile seeking after the things of this world, but I will prosper and I will be successful in everything that I do. 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 Right? If I'm wrong in what I'm doing, God will turn even that around for my benefit. Even that, or everything that I do, God will turn around to benefit me in my growth in him, right? Listen, he says, everyone who competes, verse 25 again, it says, and everyone who competes for the prize is tempered in all things. Now they that do it obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. Verse 26, therefore I run, not with uncertainty, thus I fight, or I strive, not as one who beats the air. In other words, what he's saying is, if I have 100 people running this race with me, and all of them are running in different ways, in other words, all of them have different ways to get to God, different ways to get the blessings of God, different ways to be pleasing to God, right? You ever heard that one? That your actions are pleasing to God, different ways to be pleasing of God. You know what pleases God? My faith in his son. That pleases God. There is nothing else that I could do that can please the Father. Nothing. Nothing that I could ever do that could please the Father other than my faith in him. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Why does the church think that they can be pleasurable to God in any other way? Because they think that their actions, right, anything apart from faith can still be pleasing to him. But there is only one thing. So Paul puts himself right with 100 other people running the race. But he's the only one that's in that narrow place. Just Jesus Christ and just him crucified. You know what happens? He runs in such a way where he knows, I know that I'm running the winning way. I know that in other words, I know exactly, right? That I know before I run this race in full that I'm winning already. In other words, I have already won. Before I even finish, right? Before I even finish, I've already won. Before I even finish, I am already a winner. But no one else can run with that certainty. You know why? Because the guy over here running, trying to do the right thing, and I hope I'm being a good steward, Lord, today. No, he's wearing himself out. He doesn't know if he's won. The one over here that's trying, oh, Lord, I wonder if I've told enough people about Jesus. I wonder if I've knocked on enough doors. I wonder if I've been a good person. I wonder if I've read my Bible enough today. I wonder if I prayed enough. I wonder if I'm being lazy. I wonder. They don't know. They have no certainty in their running. They are trying to get somewhere, and they're running in the race, but they are not running in the winning way. Therefore, they are going nowhere. But Paul, standing right in the center, he says, I'm running, and I've already won. I don't have to wait for anything. I have already won today. He says, I don't run with uncertainty. I'm running knowing who my surety is, right? I'm not running like, I'm not fighting like somebody who's beating the air and not knowing where their target is. I know exactly whom I have seen. I know exactly whom I have learned, and I know exactly who has been teaching me, right? So the things that I'm looking at, do you understand why it's the winning way? Because you're looking at something that's already completed 2,000 years ago. You're looking at someone who already arrived. You're looking at someone who has already fully entered into everything, right? So you running, right? You following him, right? The way Pastor Mike has been preaching, right? You chasing him, right? Are you sure, Pastor Jose, that you're going to enter into all heavenly things? Of course, because look at who I'm looking at. Of course. If he did, I did. The way Pastor Mike has been putting it is kind of like this way. This reminds me, like, if you see somebody enter through a door, are you going to end up in the same room that they ended up with going through the same door? Well, of course. Duh. Are you going to enter into the same room that you follow them into? Yes, because you're going through the same door. It's the same way. The sacrifice of Jesus Christ is how Christ entered into everything that he has, right? We have entered through the same door. Therefore, we have what he has, right? So are you running? Sure. Well, pretty darn. Yeah, I'm running pretty darn sure because I already can see what he has. Are you sure? Are you certain? Sure. Are you fighting like somebody that doesn't know who's there? No. I run with certainty. Everybody else around me is running, and they think they're running in the same way. They may look like they're running like me. They may wear the same shorts and the same New Balance sneakers. They may have the headband on. They may have their AirPods in, and everybody looks like they're running the same way, but they are not. You may look like me, but you ain't running like me, right? You may look like me, but you ain't running like me, right? Now, there are those, though, then that come alongside, like people here and many people that around the world, right, that have started to run, will have started to run in line with one another. And what is that? In line with the form of a church? Nope. In line with one particular pastor's slant on doctrine? No. We're just running in line with Jesus Christ. We're just running in line with our Father, right? Where he says, whenever you turn to the right or to the left, he continually corrects you and say, nope, that's not the way. This is the way. This is the way. My son, Jesus Christ, he's the only way. Keep going in that way. Keep going in that way. Keep going in that way. So then you end up running in a winning way. You end up running in such a way that you are assured to win. Why? Because you have already won. You see, we're not people that are running to win. We are people that are already conquerors, right? We are people that are already overcomers, right? And there is a manifestation of that. In other words, there is a visible seeing that even the world can see, right? But you're not righteous when the world sees righteousness. You're not righteous when you perceive an outward righteousness of your own, right? You're righteous when he made you righteous. And you were righteous when you received his righteousness. That's when you were righteous. But we have accustomed ourselves, or the church has accustomed itself to waiting until it sees it. And then when it sees righteousness, then it knows that it is righteous, right? But that's not how it works, right? You are righteous the day that you receive the righteousness of God. In other words, everything that you receive through Jesus Christ. Listen, there is a way to admonish every single believer in the church, right? There is a way to encourage each and every single person, right? And that the way that the Lord, right, encourages us, the way that he has for years been encouraging us and continues to encourage us in, is continue to listen to me, and you will come to that narrow place where the only one that you will see is Jesus Christ and him crucified and no one else, right? You know, it's interesting, and you hear Paul talk about, you know, I have run my race, I have finished the course, like all this stuff, you know, that he equates and he says in a certain way to help us understand certain things, right? In other words, the Holy Spirit words things in such a way. It's really, though, for the weakness of our understanding that certain things are worded in such a way, right? In other words, they're worded in kind of human terms So then what do? Then we read something like that and we start thinking about marathons, and then we start, I remember one of the first services that we had for when we started this church. We were still in my house, right? We hadn't even gotten a location or anything yet. I remember it was somewhere along the line here, somewhere, I thought probably even read that verse, but I had a video of a guy running and all this stuff. But the thing is, we think like, if you can like get people's minds, right, on like an earthly thing, that somehow, somehow if you can get their minds on this earthly example and you learn about that earthly example, somehow you can grow in spiritual understanding, right? That, your strength is renewed, or your youth is renewed like the eagles. So then we started studying eagles, and then start developing all kinds of stupid things about eagles that people that know animals say, you know what, you Christians, you're like off your rocker, because that's actually not true about eagles at all, right? So then we look like idiots, right? Because we make up our own doctrine about an animal, right? But God is not telling you that your youth is renewed like an eagle so you can learn about a stupid animal. The Lord teaches you things so that you can see what Christ has given you. Set your mind on the Lord and allow the Lord to teach you, to testify about his son. And you don't even have to know what an eagle is, right? You don't even have to actually know what an eagle as like the bird even is. You don't even have to have ever even seen an eagle, right? You just have to allow the Lord to help you see Jesus, right? In the same way, we don't have to wait, right, to see manifestations of things in our lives. To put, Pastor Mike prior to service was talking about like how sometimes we put timing on things, right? Like if you hear that if your mind is renewed, right, the power of God is in you to prosper you, then we start thinking, okay, all right, I'm going to give it a try, and I'm going to start really, really, really praying a lot, and I'm going to read my Bible, and I'm just going to say stuff, and I'm just going to meditate on Jesus, and then I know, Lord, I'm going to prosper. And then when you see that here come and gone the whole freaking year, and you're still having problems with your finances, and nothing's changed, right? Then what happens? Then you stop, you give up, and you just let go, right? But see, it's because what we're doing is, unbeknownst to us, it's not really about you growing in the knowledge of Jesus Christ and him crucified. It's that you want to see a result. Therefore, you're chasing. Who are you chasing? Are you chasing Jesus, or are you chasing a result? You're chasing a result, right? But listen, but God is not unfeeling, right? When you are in a struggle, it's not like God looks and says, I see you, Jose, and what you struggle there, but you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm going to let you learn your lesson until you learn to look at Jesus for real, right? That's not how he works, right? God is not some kind of an unfeeling person, right? Where he cares nothing about what you've done. Instead of what he's saying, listen, this is more what it sounds like, right? This is more what it should sound like in your mind. He says, you know what, Jose? I see what you're going through. But you know what? The only way out of what you're doing is to be able to see the way of escape that I've already put on the inside of you. You're striving towards something that you already possess. You're working for something that you already have. If you could let me into your heart and into your mind, for me to be able to focus your heart and help you see what I have done in you, your striving would change. And instead of you going after the things that the people of this world go after, instead you would come after me and see that everything else is a disadvantage to you, and that I am your only advantage in this world, right? That only with what I have done. And you'd allow him that correction. You'd allow him to speak into your heart and say, no, that's not the way. No, this is not the way. No, this is the way. And he's telling you, this is the way, walk in it because you can, right? He's telling you, in other words, he's not telling you this is the way, get with it. He's saying this is the way, go ahead and walk in it. Like, in other words, use it. It's yours. Walk in it. He's not telling you get it. He's saying walk in it. To you that know the truth, that are saved, right? He's not telling you get with the program. He's telling you walk in what you already have. He's not telling you to work for something. He's telling you, no, I want you to walk in it. Like you can, right? It's like a little boy or a little girl that already has the ability to walk, but they're scared to walk, right? He says, no, you can walk in this thing. It's okay. You can walk. I'm watching you. You can walk. Walk in it. Walk in this thing. In other words, he is saying you have the power on the inside of you to already walk in these things. In other words, through the knowledge of what I have done, you can literally walk today in the things that I have already given you. You have the ability to do that.
We hope you enjoyed this message from Reformed Church. If you have, please share this with someone else and help us get this unpopular message to the world. If you'd like to support Reformed Church, you can do so at reforminus.com/give. Also on our website, you can take advantage of our free messages, articles, and even full discipleship courses. Start reforming your mind now at reforminus.com.